Does the American government control Africa? It's a question that sparks heated debates across the continent. To many Africans, the answer is obvious. They believe that although colonialism officially ended decades ago, powerful nations still shape Africa's politics, economies, and future, but in more subtle ways. Others completely reject that belief. They argue that Africa's destiny lies in the hands of Africans themselves, and that blaming foreign powers overlooks the continent's own achievements and challenges. So, why do these different beliefs exist? In this documentary, we're not here to tell you what to believe. We're here to explore why many Africans think this way, the history that shaped these ideas, the events people often point to, and the evidence historians and political analysts continue to debate. Because before you can answer one of Africa's biggest questions, you must first understand its history. This is that story. The shadow that never left. The year was 1960. Across Africa, one nation after another celebrated independence. Flags were raised, national anthems echoed through crowded streets. Millions believed that a new era had finally begun. For the first time in generations, Africans would govern themselves. But as the celebrations faded, a new question began to emerge. Had colonialism truly ended, or had it simply changed its appearance? Many Africans came to believe that while foreign flags had disappeared, foreign influence remained. They argued that control no longer required direct rule. Instead, influence could be exercised through economic relationships, military partnerships, diplomacy, and competition among global powers. The idea came to be known as neocolonialism, the belief that political independence did not always mean complete independence in practice. Whether that belief is accurate, exaggerated, or somewhere in between has remained one of the most important debates in modern African history. To understand why so many people hold these views today, we must first return to the years immediately after independence. The 1950s and 1960s changed Africa forever. One after another, African nations won their independence. The colonial empires that had ruled much of the continent for decades were retreating. For millions of Africans, independence meant more than a new flag. It meant hope. Hope that Africa's wealth would finally benefit Africans. Hope that decisions would be made in African capitals, not in distant foreign ones. But independence arrived during one of the most dangerous periods in modern history, the Cold War. The world was divided between two rival superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Each feared that the other would gain influence across Africa. As a result, many newly independent African countries became part of a much larger global competition. Some governments received economic aid. Others received military training. In some countries, foreign governments supported particular leaders or political movements they believed would align with their interests. The Soviet Union also backed governments and movements in different parts of Africa. These rivalries shaped politics in several African countries. For many Africans, these events created a lasting impression. Although colonial rule had ended, they felt that powerful nations still had significant influence over what happened on the continent. Around this time, some African leaders began using a new word to describe what they believed was happening: neocolonialism. They argued that a country could be politically independent, yet still depend heavily on stronger nations for trade, finance, security, or international support. Supporters of this idea pointed to foreign investment, military cooperation, and international lending as examples of outside influence. Others disagreed, arguing that these relationships were partnerships that many African governments entered into voluntarily, and that they could bring investment, infrastructure, and security. This disagreement has never fully disappeared. Even today, when a foreign government announces a military agreement, a major investment, or a diplomatic initiative in Africa, some people see cooperation. Others see influence. And for many Africans, these moments reinforce the belief that independence did not end the struggle over who shapes Africa's future. But no single event has influenced this debate more than what happened in one Central African nation just months after it gained independence. To understand why, we must travel to the Congo in 1960, a place where hope, conflict, and international rivalry collided in ways that would leave a lasting mark on African history. As newly independent African nations sought to define their futures, they entered a world shaped by Cold War rivalry. Both the United States and the Soviet Union viewed Africa as strategically important, and each supported different governments, leaders, or political movements in various countries. One event that continues to influence public discussion is the Congo Crisis of the early 1960s. Patrice Lumumba, the country's first prime minister, became a symbol of African independence. His removal from power and subsequent assassination have been studied for decades. Historical research and declassified documents show that several international actors, alongside Congolese political rivals, were involved in the wider crisis. Historians continue to debate the relative responsibility of each actor, but the episode became one of the strongest reasons many Africans began questioning how much influence foreign powers held over the continent. Over the following decades, similar questions arose in countries such as Angola, Mozambique, Ethiopia, and Somalia, where Cold War competition influenced local conflicts. These events reinforced the belief among many Africans that powerful nations often pursue their own strategic interests in Africa. Today, the debate has changed. Few people argue that Africa is ruled by foreign governments in the colonial sense. Instead, discussion often centers on influence. Some scholars and political leaders describe this as neocolonialism, the idea that powerful countries can still shape outcomes through diplomacy, trade, investment, military partnerships, or financial relationships rather than direct rule. Supporters of this view point to foreign military cooperation, international lending, multinational corporations, and competition over natural resources as evidence that global powers continue to pursue strategic interests in Africa. Others disagree. They argue that these relationships are negotiated by sovereign African governments and can bring investment, security, jobs, and infrastructure. They also point out that Africa works with many global partners, not only the United States, but also China, European countries, regional organizations, and others. At the same time, many analysts argue that domestic governance, corruption, institutions, and policy choices remain central to understanding Africa's successes and challenges. The result is an ongoing debate with no single explanation. So, does the American government control Africa? There is no simple answer. What is clear is that historical events, from colonial rule to the Cold War, have shaped how many Africans view foreign influence today. Those experiences continue to affect public opinion and political debate. Some see international engagement as necessary cooperation in an interconnected world. Others remain cautious, believing history shows that powerful nations often pursue their own interests. Perhaps the most important lesson is not to accept any claim without examination. History invites us to ask difficult questions, compare evidence, and understand multiple perspectives. Whether you believe foreign influence remains a defining force, or think Africa's future depends primarily on decisions made within the continent, one fact is beyond debate. Africa's story is still being written, and the next chapter belongs to Africans themselves. Thank you for watching.